Imagine this. It's midnight. The streets outside are silent, the kind of silence that feels heavy, unnatural, like the world is holding its breath. You've turned off the lights. Maybe you're lying in bed. Maybe you're driving alone on an empty road, headlights slicing through the darkness. And then, without warning, you hear a whisper, soft, familiar. But there's no one there. What if I told you that across America, countless people have shared the same eerie experiences? A figure in the mirror that shouldn't be there. A crying woman by the river who vanishes when you approach. A tall, faceless man who watches from the tree line, waiting for you to notice him. Tonight, we're going to dive into the shadows of folklore, superstition, and chilling encounters that have been whispered from generation to generation. This isn't just storytelling. It's a seance of words, an invitation to fear, a reminder that some legends refuse to stay buried. So lock your doors, turn down the lights, and prepare yourself for the stories you'll wish you could forget. There's a reason why mirrors appear so often in ghost stories. They don't just reflect our faces. They hold mysteries, distortions, maybe even portals. And one of the most famous American urban legends tied to mirrors is the chilling story of Bloody Mary. If you grew up in the U.S., chances are someone dared you to do it. Go into a dark bathroom, stand before the mirror, whisper her name 3 times, Bloody Mary. What happens next depends on who tells the story. Some say she'll appear with hollow eyes. Others claim she'll pull you into the mirror, trapping you forever in her world. A world where reflections don't quite match, where shadows move on their own. But where did this story come from? Historians trace the legend back to a mix of folklore and historical figures. Some connect it to Mary I of England, nicknamed Bloody Mary because of her turbulent reign. Others say it's rooted in old superstitions about mirrors being gateways to the spirit world, places where souls linger after death. But the more likely explanation lies in the psychology of fear. Staring into a mirror in dim light can trick your brain. Scientists call it the Troxler effect. When your eyes focus on one point too long, your brain begins to distort or erase details. Faces shift, shadows bend, and before you know it, you're seeing things that aren't really there. That means the Bloody Mary ritual is not just a test of courage. It's a test of your own mind. Even though everyone knows it's just a game. Many kids and even teenagers in the U.S. still dare each other to try it. And plenty of them swear that something strange happened. One girl from Ohio recalled standing in her bathroom with two friends. They laughed nervously, said the name 3 times, and for a moment, nothing happened. But then, the mirror fogged over, though there was no steam, no hot water running. In the mist, they thought they saw the outline of a woman's face. By the time they turned on the light, it was gone. Coincidence? A trick of imagination? Or something much darker? Another story tells of a boy who tried the ritual on Halloween night. He whispered the name 3 times, then burst out laughing. But later, when he turned off the light to go to bed, he swore he saw his reflection smiling back at him, even though he wasn't smiling. The legend persists because of experiences like these. Because in the quiet darkness of a bathroom, when you're staring into your own reflection, you can almost believe that something else is staring back. And the scariest part? You don't even have to believe in it for it to work. The ritual isn't about summoning her. It's about opening yourself, making your mind vulnerable, inviting in whatever your imagination wants to create. Bloody Mary is not just about ghosts. It's about fear itself. Fear of the dark, fear of the unknown, fear of seeing something in the mirror that shouldn't be there. So tonight, before you go to sleep, ask yourself, would you dare stand before a mirror, alone in the dark, and whisper her name? The forest has always been a place of mystery, a place where light fades too quickly, where branches twist into claw-like fingers, where the silence is so deep it begins to sound alive. For centuries, people have told stories of figures that haunt the woods, witches, creatures, spirits. But in modern times, one figure has come to dominate the nightmares of countless people, especially children and teenagers. He has no face. He has no eyes, no mouth, no features to show you mercy or malice. He wears a black suit, unnaturally tall, impossibly thin, and yet he's never mistaken for a man. he is something else entirely. He is known as Slender Man. Unlike legends that stretch back centuries, Slender Man is a child of the digital age. His origins can be traced to 2009 on an internet forum called Something Awful. Users there were challenged to create paranormal images, photos that looked as though they captured something unexplainable. One contributor, Eric Knudsen, known online as Victor Surge, posted black and white photos of children, altered to include a tall, faceless figure looming in the background. The captions told eerie little stories of missing children, of strange figures near playgrounds, of shadows at the edge of the forest. What began as a creative challenge quickly became something more. The photos struck a nerve, igniting imaginations around the world. New stories emerged. Fan art spread across blogs. Videos appeared on YouTube and other sites, with people swearing they had caught glimpses of the faceless stalker in real life. What made Slender Man so powerful? Perhaps it's the simplicity. A man with no face is a man stripped of humanity. You can't read his intentions, can't guess his emotions. You can't even tell if he's looking at you, though deep down, you feel that he is. Psychologists say faceless figures hit a deep, primal fear in humans. We rely on facial cues to determine safety. A smile signals friendliness. A frown signals danger. Remove the face, and the brain fills the void with dread. Add to this his unnatural height, his impossibly long limbs, his tendency to appear just at the edge of vision, and you have the perfect recipe for unease. He's familiar, yet deeply wrong. As the legend grew, stories about Slender Man multiplied across forums and social media. Some described him as a silent watcher who follows people through forests, his tall frame blending with the trees. Others told of him standing outside windows at night, motionless, waiting. And then there were the more elaborate myths, that he could extend his arms into long, twisting tentacles, that he could appear and disappear at will, vanishing into the shadows, that those who saw him too often began to dream of him, until the line between waking and sleeping blurred. In every version, Slender Man is less of a character and more of an atmosphere. He represents unease itself, a presence that lingers in the corner of your eye, just beyond clear focus. Many of the stories place him in forests, and that's no coincidence. Forests have long been settings of fear in folklore. They are vast, quiet, and easy to get lost in. Paths disappear, shadows stretch, and the deeper you go, the more isolated you feel. Slender Man embodies that isolation. He is the watcher who knows the woods better than you ever could. He doesn't chase. He doesn't shout. He simply waits. And the longer you linger, the more certain you become that you are not alone. One chilling tale tells of a camper in the Pacific Northwest who woke in the middle of the night to find the forest utterly silent. No crickets, no owls, just silence. When he peeked outside his tent, he swore he saw a tall figure among the trees, its head tilted slightly, as though studying him. By the time he worked up the courage to look again, it was gone. Of course, skeptics point out that Slender Man is fiction, created on a forum, spread by fan imagination. But the power of the legend lies not in whether he's real, but in how people react. Children and teenagers began claiming to see him at the edges of their neighborhoods. Hikers reported figures that vanished when approached. Dreams of faceless men became common enough to be shared in forums across the internet. This blending of fiction and belief is what folklorists call a living legend, a story so compelling that it takes on a life of its own, passed along not as history, but as personal experience. Slender Man also represents something very modern, the way the internet itself creates culture. Unlike older myths, which spread slowly by word of mouth, this one exploded across blogs, videos, and social networks in a matter of months. He became the subject of web series like Marble Hornets, a found footage style story that turned the legend into a long-form narrative. The series blurred lines between fiction and reality, drawing viewers into the idea that perhaps Slender Man wasn't just a story after all. In this sense, Slender Man is one of the first great monsters of the internet age. He doesn't come from ancient folklore. He comes from Photoshop, forums, and viral storytelling. And yet, he has the same power as centuries-old ghosts: to frighten, to fascinate, to make you Look over your shoulder when the night is too quiet. The endurance of Slender Man shows us something about ourselves. He is not tied to a specific place like Bloody Mary or La Llorona. He doesn't haunt one river, one road, or one mirror. Instead, he haunts the imagination itself. He is a blank canvas of fear, ready for anyone to paint their anxieties upon. Do you fear being followed? Slender Man is always behind you. Do you fear being watched? He's at the edge of the forest, faceless, staring. Do you fear losing control of your own mind? He slips into your dreams, making them his own. That's why the legend has lasted more than a decade in internet culture, far longer than most viral memes. He taps into something timeless, the fear of the unknown watcher. So the next time you walk through the woods, and the trees seem to grow taller, and the silence presses in like a weight, ask yourself, are you really alone? Or is there something, someone, standing just beyond the tree line, faceless, patient, waiting for you to notice? Slender Man may have been born from the internet, but like all powerful legends, he has slipped free of his origins. Now, he belongs to the realm of whispers, shadows, and nightmares, and whether or not he exists in the flesh, he most certainly exists in our fears. Every culture has its ghosts, but some are so powerful, so tragic, that their cries echo across borders, carrying fear from one generation to the next. In Latin American folklore, and now deeply woven into American storytelling, there is one such ghost. She is not faceless like Slender Man, and she is not confined to mirrors like Bloody Mary. She is a woman, recognizable, human, and yet utterly terrifying. She is known as La Llorona, the Weeping Woman. The story of La Llorona is often told as a tale of sorrow. A woman, deeply heartbroken, finds herself abandoned and betrayed. In her grief, she loses what she cherishes most and is condemned to wander the earth, searching for what she can never recover. Because of this tragedy, she is said to appear near rivers, lakes, and creeks, weeping into the night. Her cries are filled with longing and regret, a sound that chills even the bravest hearts. La Llorona means the weeping woman, But the name alone cannot capture the atmosphere that comes with the legend. In Mexico, in the American Southwest, and in neighborhoods where folklore is passed down like family heirlooms, children are warned. Don't stay out too late by the water. Don't wander alone at night, because if you hear La Llorona crying, you may not be safe. Many parents have used the legend as a cautionary tale, a way to teach children to stay away from dangerous rivers and lakes at night. Over time, though, the story grew beyond practical warnings. It became something larger, an echo of grief, regret, and loss that resonated with entire communities. The image of La Llorona is consistent. A tall, thin woman in a flowing white gown, her hair long and dark, her face hidden by shadows or by her own hands. Some say her eyes are hollow. Others say they overflow with endless tears. She drifts silently until the moment she begins to cry, and by then, it is often too late. Countless people have shared experiences that they believe connect to La Llorona. One chilling account comes from New Mexico, where a man driving late at night swore he saw a woman dressed in white standing by the roadside near a ditch, thinking she needed help. He pulled over, but when he approached, she lifted her head, and though her face was pale, her eyes seemed endless, filled with sorrow. Then, in the blink of an eye, she vanished. Moments later, he heard it, the sound of weeping, echoing from the ditch, long after she was gone. In Texas, a family reported being awakened at night by the sound of wailing outside their home. When the father opened the door, he saw nothing. But when he stepped closer to the riverbank, the crying grew louder, so close it was as though someone was standing right behind him. Yet, when he turned, no one was there. The sound followed him back into the house, echoing until sunrise. Skeptics argue that these experiences could be explained by natural sounds, the wind through the trees, the distant call of animals mistaken for human cries. But for those who have heard La Llorona, the sound is unmistakable. They describe it as a mixture of grief, rage, and despair, a sound that strikes the soul, not just the ears. Folklorists see La Llorona as more than a ghost story. She is a symbol. She represents the pain of loss, the weight of regret, and the fear of consequences that can never be undone. In this way, she is both a haunting figure and a cultural lesson about the choices we make and the things we cannot change. What makes her story so enduring is its complexity. She is not simply a villain, nor purely a victim. She is both. A tragic figure whose suffering has transformed her into something terrifying. In some versions of the legend, she seeks out children, mistaking them for her own lost family. In others, she is drawn to anyone who wanders too close to water after dark. Always, though, her presence is marked by the same eerie sign, the unmistakable sound of weeping. And there is a chilling twist often told. If her cry sounds distant, she may actually be near. But if her cry sounds close, she could be far away. The legend plays with distance, with perception, adding another layer of unease to an already frightening tale. La Llorona's story has traveled far beyond the villages and rivers where it began. Today, she appears in film, books, and even festivals. Her image is instantly recognizable. A woman in white, drifting along the water's edge, her cry echoing through the night. But despite these modern retellings, the essence of her story remains the same. She is a reminder of the consequences of despair and the persistence of sorrow. She embodies the fears we all share, the fear of losing what we love, the fear of regret, and the fear that grief itself can take on a life of its own. So tonight, as you listen to the wind, as you hear the creaks of the night, listen closely. Do you hear weeping? Is it just your imagination? Or is La Llorona calling for you, mistaking you for the ones she lost centuries ago? La Llorona is more than a story. She is a voice in the darkness, a reminder that sorrow never truly dies. And as long as her name is whispered, her cry will never fade. Roads at night have a way of turning ordinary journeys into uneasy experiences. The darkness seems deeper. Headlights stretch only so far, and every shadow on the roadside feels like it's waiting to move. Perhaps that's why so many ghost stories in America take place along highways and back roads, and among them, none is as enduring or as chilling as the legend of Resurrection Mary. The story centers around Archer Avenue, just southwest of Chicago, near Resurrection Cemetery. Since the 1930s, countless drivers have told the same story with haunting consistency. A young woman in a white dress, sometimes barefoot, sometimes wearing dancing shoes, appears by the roadside, looking for a ride. She looks real, she looks alive, and she looks desperate. Most drivers, being kind-hearted, stop to pick her up. They describe her as quiet, polite, sometimes shivering as though she's cold. She usually asks to be taken home or to a dance hall. Sometimes she says little at all, gazing out the window, her pale face illuminated by passing street lights. And then, without warning, she vanishes. The most popular version of the legend suggests Mary was a young woman who loved dancing. In the 1930s, she attended a party or dance at one of the local halls along Archer Avenue. On her way home, something went wrong. Some versions say she argued with her companion and decided to walk. Others say she simply never made it back. What is certain is this: she never returned home. Her spirit, people say, was laid to rest at Resurrection Cemetery. But since then, she has been seen walking Archer Avenue, forever searching for a way back to the dance she never finished. The legend of resurrection. Mary isn't just one story, it's dozens, even hundreds of stories told over decades. What makes it so compelling is the consistency. Jerry Palace, late 1930s. He claimed he met a beautiful blonde woman in a white dress at a Chicago dance hall. They danced together, talked, and when she asked for a ride home, he agreed. But as they drove past Resurrection Cemetery, she asked to be let out. Before he could stop the car, she vanished. Palace swore the experience was real, and his account is one of the earliest recorded. The taxi driver. 1970s. A cab driver picked up a young woman in white along Archer Avenue. She gave him an address. When he arrived, the house belonged to an older couple who explained that no young woman lived there. In fact, their daughter had died years earlier. Buried, they said, at Resurrection Cemetery. The cemetery gates. Also, 1970s. Caretakers at the cemetery reported finding strange, burn-like handprints on the wrought iron gates, as though someone had tried to pull them open with supernatural force, Locals whispered it was Mary herself, trying to get back inside. The marks were eventually removed, but the story only added fuel to the legend. Folklorists often describe Mary as a classic vanishing hitchhiker, a type of ghost story found around the world. These spirits usually take the form of travelers or strangers who accept a ride, only to disappear before reaching their destination. In Mary's case, the dance hall connection and the cemetery make her story particularly vivid. She represents unfinished business, a night that should have been full of joy, but ended in sorrow. Some believe she wanders until she finds the partner who will finally take her home. Others say she is a warning, a reminder to drivers to stay alert on dark roads. Interestingly, resurrection, Mary's story, is not unique to Chicago. Versions of the hitchhiker ghost appear in Hawaii, where spirits appear along highways late at night. In South Africa, drivers have told stories of mysterious passengers who vanish before reaching their destination. Even in parts of Europe, folklore speaks of spectral riders seeking one last journey. What sets Resurrection Mary apart is the sheer number of witnesses and the strength of the local tradition. Decade after decade, people continue to share their stories, and the details rarely change. A young woman in white, Archer Avenue, the cemetery gates. Part of what makes the story so effective is how ordinary it feels. Driving at night is something many of us do. Picking up a stranger, especially someone who looks frightened or in need, feels natural. There's kindness in offering a ride, but the legend twists that kindness into something chilling, because sometimes the person you're helping isn't alive. It's a reminder that even the most everyday situations, driving home after a party, passing through familiar roads, can suddenly cross into the uncanny. Resurrection. Mary continues to fascinate because she blends romance, tragedy, and mystery. She is a figure caught between worlds, alive enough to look real, but spectral enough to disappear without warning. For locals in Chicago, she has become a part of cultural identity. Tour guides mention her. Ghost tours visit Archer Avenue, and late-night drivers still glance nervously at the roadside, wondering if tonight might be the night they see her. So if you ever find yourself driving along Archer Avenue late at night, and you see a pale young woman in white standing by the roadside. Think carefully before stopping. She may look lost. She may look lonely. But if the stories are true, you may not be driving alone for long. Some legends terrify us because they are ancient, rooted in centuries of superstition. Others chill us because they are modern, whispered online, and passed around in hushed tones at sleepovers. But few stories feel as deeply unsettling as the accounts of the black-eyed children. Unlike La Llorona, who cries by rivers, or Resurrection Mary, who lingers on highways, the black-eyed children don't haunt specific places. They come to you, to your home, to your car, to your door in the middle of the night. The earliest well-known account came in the 1990s from journalist Brian Bethel in Abilene, Texas. As the story goes, he was sitting in his car one evening when two boys approached. They appeared to be around 10 or 12 years old, wearing hoodies and speaking politely. They asked for a ride home, claiming they had forgotten money to see a movie. Something about them felt off. Their voices, their insistence, the strange sense of dread that washed over him. Then he noticed their eyes, completely black, no whites, no pupils, just endless darkness. Overwhelmed by unease, Bethel refused and drove away. When he glanced in the mirror, the boys were gone. Since that story spread, dozens of others have claimed similar encounters, not just in Texas, but across the United States and beyond. The most common version of the legend happens late at night. A knock on the door. When the homeowner answers, they find one or two children standing outside. They are pale, with dark hair, wearing ordinary clothes. Their voices are soft. Their requests simple. Can we come in? Can we use your phone? Can you give us a ride? At first, nothing seems too strange until the witness finally looks closely and notices the eyes, solid black. Witnesses describe an overwhelming wave of fear, as though every instinct screams that something is wrong. Many slam the door shut immediately, their hearts racing. One of the eeriest parts of the legend is that the children never come inside on their own. They always ask for permission. They wait at the threshold, repeating their request calmly, sometimes even with urgency. but they do not cross unless invited. This detail has led many to compare them to old vampire myths, where supernatural beings needed to be welcomed before entering a home. Why this rule exists in the legend is unknown, but it makes the encounters even more chilling. The decision rests with the person at the door. Let them in, or turn them away. What happens if you say yes? That part remains unclear, because most stories end with people refusing. A few tales suggest misfortune follows: illness, strange noises in the house, or a sense of being watched. But no consistent ending has ever been confirmed. Perhaps that uncertainty is what makes the legend so unsettling. The fear comes not from what is known, but from what might happen if you let your guard down. Folklorists and paranormal enthusiasts have offered many theories about the black-eyed children. Aliens. Some suggest they are extraterrestrial beings, disguised as children to lower defenses. Demons or spirits. Others believe they are supernatural entities feeding on fear. Internet. Urban myth. Skeptics argue the legend began as a creepypasta, a scary story meant to spread online like a modern campfire tale. Regardless of origin, the consistency of the details, pale children, monotone voices, black eyes, the request for permission, keeps the legend alive. Scientists and skeptics suggest the phenomenon could be explained by a mix of imagination, low light conditions, and the human brain's natural fear of the uncanny. When something looks almost normal, but not quite, like children with inhuman eyes, it triggers discomfort. This reaction is known as the uncanny valley effect. Late-night knocks, shadows, and tired minds may create the rest of the story. But to those who have lived it, the fear feels far too real to be dismissed. Perhaps the most disturbing aspect of the legend is that the figures take the form of children. We are wired to feel protective, to trust a child who asks for help. That instinct is weaponized in these stories. The contrast between innocence and menace is what makes the black-eyed children so haunting. They are familiar enough to draw you in, yet alien enough to send chills through your bones. Like Slender Man. The black-eyed children are very much a product of the internet age. Stories spread on forums, creepypasta websites, and YouTube videos, creating a cycle of retelling. and reshaping. Each generation of storytellers adds its own twist, but the core remains unchanged. A knock, a request, and the inhuman eyes. They have become part of modern folklore, proof that even in a digital world filled with science and technology, we still crave and fear tales of the unexplained. Imagine it. It's just past midnight. A knock at the door pulls you from half sleep. You expect a neighbor, maybe a delivery mistake. Instead, two children stand on your porch, pale and quiet. They ask politely to come in, their voices almost rehearsed. You hesitate, and then you notice the eyes. What would you do? Some legends come from folklore. Others are born on the internet. But some places don't need stories to make them frightening. Their walls, their history, and their atmosphere speak for themselves. And few places in America embody this more than the Stanley Hotel in Estes Park, Colorado. Perched high in the Rocky Mountains, the Stanley Hotel looks beautiful at first glance, grand, elegant, a shining white colonial revival structure surrounded by breathtaking mountain views. Built in 1909 by inventor and businessman Freelan Oscar Stanley. It was meant to be a luxury resort for wealthy travelers. Its wide verandas, crystal chandeliers, and sweeping mountain air made it a perfect getaway. But over the years, the hotel became famous not just for its beauty, but for its reputation as one of the most haunted places in America. In 1974, author Stephen King checked into the Stanley Hotel with his wife, Tabitha. It was near the end of the tourist season, and the massive building was nearly empty. That night, King wandered the long hallways. The grand dining room was deserted, the silence pressing in. He slept in room 217. That night, he had a vivid dream of his young son running through endless corridors, chased by something unspeakable. King awoke in a cold sweat. By morning, the seed for his famous novel, The Shining, had been planted. From that point on, the Stanley Hotel would forever be linked with horror in popular culture. Long before King stayed there, room 217 had its own story. In 1911, an accident with a gas lamp caused an explosion, injuring a housekeeper named Elizabeth Wilson. She survived, but ever since, guests have reported strange activity in that room. Some claim their lights turn on and off by themselves. Others say their luggage was mysteriously unpacked, or their clothes neatly folded during the night. A few even describe the sensation of being tucked into bed. Staff often suggest these are friendly gestures from the spirit of Elizabeth, still caring for guests long after her time. Guests often report hearing the sound of children running and laughing late at night along the long corridors. But when staff go to investigate, the hallways are empty. Some visitors swear they've seen small figures darting around corners, or felt a tug on their clothing, like playful children still roaming the hotel. In the grand ballroom, where guests once danced under glittering chandeliers, faint music has been heard when no one is there. Staff say the piano sometimes plays by itself, as though invisible hands are drifting across the keys. Many believe it is Flora Stanley, the wife of the hotel's founder, who loved music and still lingers in the place she adored. Perhaps the most active area of the hotel is the 4th floor. Guests there describe footsteps pacing overhead when no one is present, doors opening and closing, and sudden drops in temperature. Paranormal investigators have captured recordings of unexplained voices and strange sounds. Some say former staff still walk these halls, tending to rooms long after their earthly duties ended. Others believe it is the concentrated energy of so many guests over the decades, leaving impressions that repeat themselves in whispers and footsteps. The stories of guests continue to fuel the legend. One visitor awoke in the middle of the night to see a woman standing at the foot of the bed, dressed in an old-fashioned uniform and carrying linens. When he blinked, she was gone. Another guest swore he heard a child giggling beneath the bed, though the room was otherwise empty. More than a few visitors have admitted they cut their stay short, unable to shake the feeling of being watched. Even skeptics often leave with uneasy memories. Admitting the hotel has an atmosphere that is difficult to explain. Skeptics argue that ghostly encounters at the Stanley Hotel are the result of suggestion. After all, when you visit a place famous for being haunted, you're more likely to notice odd creaks, flickering lights, or drafts. But believers point to the sheer number of consistent reports, spanning decades, from people of all backgrounds, including staff who spend years working in the building, Whether supernatural or psychological, one thing is certain. The atmosphere of the Stanley Hotel leaves a lasting impression. Today, the Stanley Hotel embraces its haunted reputation. Visitors can take guided tours that highlight its history and ghost stories. Paranormal enthusiasts flock to the site, some hoping for evidence, others just wanting the thrill. And of course, fans of The Shining come from all over the world to see the place that inspired King's masterpiece. The hotel still functions as a luxury stay, offering comfort alongside its chilling reputation. Guests can even request the infamous Room 217 if they dare. The legend of the Stanley Hotel continues because it blends beauty and unease. By day, the building gleams in the sunlight, surrounded by Colorado's natural beauty. By night, shadows stretch across its long halls, and silence settles in heavy and deep. It reminds us that even in places of elegance and grandeur, there can be echoes of the past, footsteps, laughter, music that never fully fade. So if you ever find yourself in Colorado, standing before the grand white hotel high in the Rockies, ask yourself, would you dare step inside? Would you sleep in room 217, turn off the lights, and wait to see what stirs in the dark? Or would you lie awake, listening for footsteps in the hall, wondering if history itself is walking beside you? There are creatures in folklore that frighten us because of what they are. Monsters with claws, fangs, and glowing eyes. But sometimes the terror doesn't come from the creature itself, but from what it represents. A sign, a warning, a shadow that falls before disaster strikes. In the hills and back roads of West Virginia, such a legend took shape in the 1960s. A creature known simply as the Mothman. The story began on November 12, 1966, in Clendenin, West Virginia. A group of grave diggers claimed they saw a strange, human-like figure flying low over the trees. It was large, with wide wings and an eerie presence. Just 3 days later, in Point Pleasant, 2 young couples were driving late at night near an abandoned munitions factory known as the TNT area. What they reported seeing would forever change the town's history. A figure stood by the roadside, tall, humanoid, with wings that stretched wide. Its most striking feature, two glowing red eyes staring directly at them. When they sped away in panic, the creature lifted into the air and followed their car, keeping pace at terrifying speeds before vanishing into the night. The story made headlines. Soon, more residents claimed to see the same winged figure near the TNT plant, around homes, and even swooping silently across highways. From late 1966 through 1967, reports of the creature poured in. Dozens of witnesses described a being nearly 7 feet tall, with wings spanning 10 feet across. Some said it let out a screeching sound unlike anything they had ever heard. For many, the glowing eyes were the most unforgettable detail. Red lights in the darkness, locking them in place with fear. Local police investigated, but found no trace. Some suggested the sightings were simply a large bird, such as a sandhill crane or barn owl, but townsfolk insisted no bird could chase a speeding car or leave such a strong impression of dread. The legend of the Mothman quickly spread beyond Point Pleasant, cementing itself as one of America's most famous cryptid tales. The story of the Mothman might have remained a curious local legend, if not for the tragedy that struck on December 15th, 1967. That evening, the Silver Bridge, which connected Point Pleasant to Ohio, collapsed during rush hour traffic. 46 people lost their lives. In the aftermath, some claimed the Mothman had been seen near the bridge in the days leading up to the disaster. A few even swore they saw it perched atop the structure itself. From that point on, the legend shifted. The Mothman was no longer just a strange creature. It became a symbol, a possible omen of catastrophe. What is the Mothman? Many explanations have been proposed over the years. Misidentified bird. Skeptics argue it could have been a crane or owl, its eyes reflecting red in headlights. Mutant creature. Others suggest it was born from chemicals and waste left at the TNT plant. Supernatural entity. Some believe it is not of this world at all, but a being that appears as a warning before disaster. Interestingly, reports of similar winged creatures have surfaced elsewhere. Some claim a figure resembling the Mothman was seen in Ukraine before the Chernobyl disaster in 1986. Could it be coincidence? Or is the Mothman a traveler, appearing wherever tragedy looms? beyond the fear. The story reveals something deeply human, our need to find meaning in chaos. When tragedy strikes, people look for signs, patterns that suggest we could have been warned. The Mothman embodies that idea, a symbol of disaster's shadow, a creature that appears not to harm, but to foretell, whether real or imagined. It gave the town of Point Pleasant a way to process fear, to make sense of events too large to understand. Today, Point Pleasant has embraced the legend. A towering stainless steel statue of the Mothman stands proudly in the town square, wings spread wide, eyes glowing red. Each year, the town hosts the Mothman Festival, drawing thousands of visitors from around the world. Vendors sell Mothman souvenirs. Authors and researchers give talks, and locals share their stories. What began as a frightening series of sightings has become a source of identity, folklore, and even celebration. The Mothman is no longer just a creature of fear. It is a cultural icon. Still, the question remains: what really happened in Point Pleasant in the 1960s? Were residents truly seeing something extraordinary? Or was it a mix of hysteria, misidentification, and suggestion? No definitive answer has ever been found. And perhaps that is the real power of the Mothman legend. It doesn't matter whether it was a bird, a spirit, or something else entirely. What matters is the impact it left on the people who believed they saw it, and on the generations who continue to tell the story. So the next time you're driving down a lonely road in the hills of West Virginia, keep an eye on the treetops. If you see two glowing red eyes watching you, remember the people of Point Pleasant and the creature that became one of America's most enduring mysteries. Is it a monster? An omen? Or simply our own fear taking flight? The answer, like the Mothman itself, remains just out of reach. We've walked through mirrors that whisper back, forests where faceless watchers stand, rivers that echo with sorrow, highways haunted by vanishing passengers, doorsteps visited by strange-eyed children, hotel halls filled with footsteps that never fade, and skies where winged omens glide before disaster. Each legend carries its own setting, its own style, its own terror. Yet all of them share one thing. They endure. Decade after decade. People keep telling them. Why? At first glance, urban legends may seem like just scary stories meant to make us jump at shadows. But dig deeper, and you find purpose. Fear has always been one of humanity's oldest teachers. Bloody Mary reminds us of how easily our minds can deceive us, especially in darkness. Slender Man warns of the dangers of anonymity, of the unknown presence just outside the light. La Llorona reflects grief and consequence, urging caution near dangerous waters. Resurrection, Mary embodies the fragility of life and the mystery of unfinished journeys. The black-eyed children play on our instinct to trust innocence, and the danger when something feels off. The Stanley Hotel shows how history lingers, shaping the atmosphere of places long after events have passed. The Mothman suggests that maybe, just maybe, the world sends us warnings before catastrophe. These stories frighten us, yes, but they also protect us, teaching caution through chills. Many folklorists believe urban legends serve as disguised lessons. Parents tell children not to wander alone at night, and instead of lecturing, they invoke La Llorona's cry. Drivers are urged to be careful on empty highways, and resurrection, Mary's tale lingers in their minds. Even the black-eyed children carry a warning. Trust your instincts when something feels wrong, no matter how polite the request. Fear sticks with us. A simple lecture can be forgotten, but a haunting story lingers. That's why we keep telling them, because legends are more memorable than rules. Another reason these legends endure is that they speak to something universal, our relationship with the unknown. Humans are wired to seek patterns, to explain what we don't understand. When we hear footsteps in an empty hallway, when a shadow seems too tall, when we glimpse glowing eyes in the dark, we tell stories to make sense of it. And sometimes those stories take on a life of their own. The mirror isn't just a reflection, it's a portal. The forest isn't just empty, it's inhabited. The knock at the door isn't just late-night coincidence, it's a test. Through stories, the unknown becomes something we can talk about, even if it still scares us. In earlier times, legends spread slowly by word of mouth, passed around campfires or whispered in small towns. But in the digital age, stories move at lightning speed. A post on a forum, a blurry video, or a chilling podcast can reach millions overnight. Slender Man and the Black-Eyed Children are prime examples. Born online, they spread globally, showing how folklore adapts to new mediums. Where once we gathered in person to scare one another, now we gather on screens. But the result is the same: shared chills, shared fear, shared wonder. There is also a strange comfort in scary stories. Think about it. Why do we love horror movies, haunted houses, or ghost tours? Because they let us experience fear in a safe space. Listening to a legend late at night, you feel your pulse quicken, your imagination run wild, but at the end, you're still safe. You can turn on the light, shut the door, laugh nervously with friends. The story gave you a brush with the unknown without ever placing you in real danger. That's the magic of storytelling. It allows us to dance with our fears without being consumed by them. Urban legends endure because they adapt. They change with the times, finding new ways to reflect old fears. Bloody Mary, once a whispered ritual in dark bathrooms, now appears in countless YouTube videos. Slender Man, born in a Photoshop contest, became a worldwide phenomenon. The Mothman went from a local curiosity to a global cryptid icon with his own festival. Each generation reshapes these legends to match its anxieties. And so the stories live on, never dying, always evolving. As we close this midnight journey, one question lingers. Are these legends real? Do ghosts truly roam highways? Do children with black eyes knock at doors? Does a faceless man wait in the woods? Skeptics will say no. Believers will say yes. But perhaps the truth is this: whether or not they exist in the flesh, they exist in our minds. And that is enough to make them real in their own way. Because the next time you look into a mirror too long, or walk through a forest alone, or hear a knock at midnight, you will remember these stories, and you will feel the fear. So tonight, as you turn off the lights, remember, legends endure because we give them life. We whisper their names, we retell their tales, we keep them alive in the shadows. And maybe, just maybe, they are listening.